My name's Orville Lim. My Chinese name is Tan Phúc Wo. I came to Canada with my mother and siblings in the 60s to join my father, who is already here. And we landed at what is now called YVR, an airport, and we came straight to Chinatown. And our first sleeping place, not a residence because it was temporary, was a one-bedroom unit on top of the previously famous, made by Trudeau, the senior Trudeau, the Green Door restaurant and the gambling club at the front of it. And I believe within that first week, my dad signed us all up here. Because here to that unit on Penn Street is only a block away. And since then, I guess with most other later generations, Chinese kids, we follow the parents to the events, namely, the New Year's, the anniversary dinners and such. And in later years, when I got my driver's license, my dad doesn't drive, so I drive him here to the association for events and meetings, and then I pick him up. And even in those days, there's always a push, or I guess a lobby, to get younger members to sign up and to join and to be active in the association. I recall one time I brought my dad for a meeting, and of course, just like a youngster, I left. And then when I came to pick him up, I was told by actually another member that was interviewed, Peter's mom, told me that I was elected a vice president. But of course, at that young age, there's always something better to do. So
how old were you?
I think at that time it was probably in my 20s. I don't think I was married then, in my probably early mid-20s. And so at that time, the younger generation generally have better things to do, as I said. And it basically didn't faze me, didn't register, probably went in one ear and out the next. So, but that's to emphasize the directions of associations, because up until now, and still, the lack of interest is most evident. And getting back to how I really got involved is that I am professionally a designated professional appraiser. So I'm quite conversant with properties, development, and heritage rehabilitation. And in 2003, the city, along with the federal government, provided funding to do feasibility studies for the Chinatown heritage buildings. And I guess started before the millennium, but in 2003, I made an effort to take advantage of the bonus density and bonus incentives for heritage rehabilitation for the association building. And from there, it evolved into what has now been rehabilitated or restored. 1903, the original Chinese Empire Reform Association facade. So I guess intensively from 2003, I've been involved in the association's goal for the conservation project of our ancestral heritage building. This, as some of the picture may show, the pediment has 1903 on it. We have a picture of the opening in 1903 of the Chinese empire. Empire at that time was the Qin Dynasty Reform Association. The history of that is that the Qin Dynasty at that time in the later years had a dowager empress who was Qi Shi, and amazingly she was in power for 46 years. And towards the end of it, there was public outcry, and of course a lot of people may know the time of the Boxer Revolution and 100 Days Reform and so forth. That's all involved during that time. And then by the founders of the Reform Association were outcasts, and I guess to the point where the Empress was sending assassins to knock them off. They founded the Reform Association, and this was the first headquarters they built in 1903. Now, there's a known second building in Victoria that has a pediment that says the first Chinese Reform Association building. However, I've tried to point out to them that their pediment includes 1905, and whereas ours is 1903. So these are the only two known Qin Dynasty Reform Association built building in Canada and likely in the world. But that's one of the drives that I believe the association has in this heritage building that is prompting me to try to do my best to bring it back to the association, to Chinatown, to the community in general. In the history, as a lot of people know, there were a lot of I guess enterprising Chinese entrepreneurs, like in Singapore, like in before Singapore was established, like Malaysia and Philippines. Actually, our family name is a Chinese Lim. It's a Chinese Taiwanese dialect translated name, and it is very big in Singapore. Some of the richest people are Lim over there, and in North America, most of them came during the late 1900s, either to prosper by working in gold mines in the States. That's why the States has a moniker of Gold Mountain in Chinese, Gamsan, where they come to try to dig gold. However, in Canada, it's slightly different because a lot of them were brought over, in my opinion, because of the conditions that we brought over and housed it or made to work. They were slaves brought over to build the Canadian Pacific Railway, and also thereafter the mines and so on. And during that time, of course, as history has shown, the Chinese were basically workers, and in some language maybe slaves, and so there's less of society acceptance of them. And so if you look at all the Chinatowns throughout North America, they are located in the less than desirable areas of the city, and in this case we're right next to downtown East Side. As in San Francisco is right next to Broadway, which Broadway in San Francisco is where all the taverns are and all the drunks are, and in some similarity like our East Hastings. So given that, the Chinese who come over has basically a restricted, relegated area that they must go to. In Vancouver here, Carroll Street, of course, is considered to be boundary because west of Carroll Street is 0-100 block west. Going east is 0-100 block east. So Carroll Street being the boundary at that time, Chinese weren't allowed west of Carroll Street. And so the associations were put together by generally the family clan name, as in the Lims, excuse me, and the Wongs, the Lees, the Mas, the Yis, and another possibility and another actual existence were mixed last names from a certain area, like Toi San or Yun San. Those are like areas, villages, counties or maybe even provinces in China that the group of people come to join together to support each other. In those days, the associations are where you go to, just like in our building here. We can see in the back there are rooms. They come back from the mines, from the railway, lumber mill. They stay here, and so this is where they can come for housing, and this is also where they come for maybe there's a few English knowledge individuals that may help send money back home, to China type of thing. So, and of course, I think during the segment here, you will see that we have some kung fu equipment, and that's the other thing is that, as I have said previously to other groups, they come together to learn kung fu to protect themselves because they're always bullied, and one of the similarity that I like to pass off, for some better understanding, is just like in regular high school. You have groups, you have gangs, and if you're by yourself, you get picked on. Same thing with the Chinatowns here, and some of the other recent productions have shown the tongs of the Chinatowns. Most recently, I think I remember a couple of programs, on San Francisco, and another one in based in New York type of thing. So that's the intent of the association, and that's how they serve the membership. We are now trying to do the same, although that is less necessary because most younger generation speak the lingo and they can drive anywhere they want, so they don't need the association more. Although that we still are available, as we do a lot of time here, is that funeral services are one thing that most people are not experiencing, and we help with that. And also some of the seniors that do not speak the language still come for help in translation, such as application for compass card, or maybe for medical MSP, or other things. In my understanding, there was also one in Calgary, Lim Sai Hor, but that has faded due to, I guess, sort of alluded situation where there's lack of follow-up generation to be interested. However, there's still two. Ours is the headquarters of the Lim Sai Hor in Canada. Another one is in Toronto. They actually have a pretty decent membership. And another side note in Toronto is that as our association name, which was amalgamated with Lim Cow Mok to become Lim Sai Hor Cow Mok Benevolent Association. In Toronto, it's still separated. So they have Lim Sai Hor and Lim Cow Mok. So we could say that it's like 2.5 in Canada. There are 7 in the USA, in the States. San Francisco is the largest one. Of course, they have the largest Chinatown in North America. And following that, neighboring is Sacramento. They also have one. That's how, I guess, active the Lims were in those days. Sacramento is not that far from San Francisco, and yet they still have one. And then across the Pacific, there's, down I-5, there's one in Los Angeles. There's 3, and then across the Pacific, there's Hawaii. Hawaii has, I think the last time I heard, they've been around for 130 odd years. And then you go across the East Coast. There's you come across Houston, and then go up to New York, and then Chicago. So that's 7. And so at our 80th anniversary celebration, we outreach to them, and sister associations all across the states and Canada and overseas. Overseas didn't attend. Toronto did, Houston did, Chicago did, LA, as well as San Francisco. And then several years later, San Francisco had the centennial, 100 years, and I was in a position to help them to have all 9 associations represented. So that was very rewarding. And as organizations go, nonprofit organizations, it's most effective when we can outreach and get support and help from each other. As noted earlier, I started concentrating on the conservation project, and as noted, this is the original headquarters of the Chinese Empire Reform Association. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Qin dynasty still had a lot of compatriots over here. And having said that, they were still quite, or rather they were most interested in the reform drive for the Qin dynasty. So when they built this building, there was a lot of prominent Chinese business entrepreneur that attended, and the newspaper clipping that I was able to, provide it was from actually Philippines, and they talked about the turning over the dirt for the building. And at that time, in probably 1902, because it didn't open until 1903, they had the founder, Kang Yu Wei of the Reform Association present, and he made a speech, and he threw his speech into a time capsule in the ground, and attending were, as noted, prominent Chinese Canadian business people, and they all threw coins in, and the newspaper referenced the coins, and the rumor was that in those days the coins were gold. So it was said that there are 8 gold coins in that time capsule. But having said that, we have in our conservation of the front facade, restoring it, tried to look for it, but we couldn't. But on the other hand, it might have already been taken away, so nobody knows. And that is the mystery that we have. And the connecting part of that is that because of that, it is said that this building has extremely positive feng shui. And I was commenting that somehow the plants all thrive, and whereas my less than green thumb at home, everything seems to dry out.
I love that story. It's one of my favorite stories.
We're still looking. we're still hoping. The tin hole is pronounced that way because it's in Mandarin, and it's a I guess I wouldn't say myth, but rather the story behind that is that she was the first. I don't know if she was a queen, but she was the first mother of prominent Lims, and she was honored and respected for her blessing of navigation travelers. And one story that I was related when I was in Hawaii, where they have the Lim Sai Hor sitting on top of the main floor, which houses a tin hole temple. And actually, evidently in the States, the tin hole temples are quite prominent. There are a number of them scattered throughout the U.S. And the story that was related was that once there was a group of Filipino sailors that visited downtown Honolulu and stopped by the Tin Hole Temple where the Lim Sai Hor is, and offered and paid respect with incense and all that. And then thereafter, the freighter that they were sailing on sunk, and the only survivors were those 6 or 7 sailors that went and paid respect at the temple. And connecting story that was related was that during the spring festivals, the Chinese New Year's, a lot of politicians generally are invited to those situations, those festivities. And one of the Honolulu councilor attended and was given a gold color medallion with the picture of Tin Hole on it. And thereafter, in one of his sailing voyages, the boat sunk. And when the helicopters came looking for survivors, they only saw him. The story is probably that he had that gold medallion, and it reflected off the sun, and that's how it was found. And so, even though he's not the member of the council anymore, he still, just like clockwork, attends and pays respect every year. Well, yes, I have had the opportunity to keep in touch with some of the associations that I had the opportunity to visit, and also they visit us, and we maintain contact. One of the ones is as noted in Hawaii. They were very interested and supportive of more support of our conservation project because of my experience in real estate. I was also, I guess, I wouldn't say consulted, but rather touched on their drive to redevelop and advocate a city lot next to them to a senior housing. As noted, Chinatowns throughout North America in the less desirable area, and I think to their credit, they were able to turn it around. That's the last I heard. But as far as the others, it's just like we invite them to our festivities, which in this association, rather than the spring Chinese New Year, is the annual anniversary. And actually, in our anniversary, I think you may have heard from another members about the scholarship. We always present our scholarship recipient at our annual anniversary banquet, and which generally falls on the first Sunday of May. And at that time, I think it was noted by Peter too that we recognize and we honor the mothers with a bouquet of flowers, because there's also generally right before Mother's Day too. Other than that, I think the connection between associations are very light, because as in even the legions, any other non-profit organization, trying to get membership to follow up is most trying and challenging. So and when and basically with everybody nowadays being especially the baby boomers, ages are getting on, and when you get into Generation X, Y, and millennials, there's less of a interest. Well, I have advocated more than once. I would say probably at least half a dozen times over the last anniversary dinner gatherings, and every opportunity I have is that there is an interest. I would submit that in everybody's brain, there will come a time where they want to know some history of their themselves. Look at what roots did for the African Americans. Look at what all the heritage or the ancestral outlets that are springing up. And I think the last one sold for seven, I think in billions. But in any case, I have always tried to appeal to their maybe interest. I understand that when they're young, they're in school. When they're older, they can start their careers, and then thereafter they have a family. So the target I would submit would be most ideal when the kids are in university, our university. Myself, my older kids were in high school, and even my younger one was only in the elementary school. But I saw the opportunity for the association to go forward in the conservation project, and maybe take advantage of the incentive to bring back the original 1903 facade. But as far as others, I would say that there is a need to appeal to them in their own, interests. Now, in those days, this interests are irrelevant because that's the only place you can come to. For my dad or for others like him, nowadays, you can have travel, you can have ski trips, you can have boating in Okanagan, travel the world or whatever. But when you come right down to it, it's still only the interest, and the interest, if it's not in the history and the roots, then we might have to wait for them. And however, we are making every effort. I think, having said that, the younger millennials may be in the market or in the interest fields of high tech, basically games, sports. Now we are making effort to providing Wi-Fi here, and as noted, the building was built in 1903. I believe during that time, the Chinatown buildings, although that we are one of the few that has this facade with the arches. I don't have the exact terminology. I believe it was part Victorian and part another, I guess, era. But it is of the construction in those days where the walls are basically double brick and wood beams across, rafters, and then I think shiplap or planks on top. So as far as structurally concerned, it certainly is not seismically graded. We had previously, as I noted, around the 2003 period, a group of UBC engineering students and the faculty did a sway test on this, and it was found to be swaying a little more than desired. However, at least it's still standing and it's not going to fall down. And during our restoring of the front facade, we structurally enhanced it and improved it significantly. Now the windows, as you can see, are wood frame. Now the old ones were dilapidated, and in our effort to try to restore them was I guess made a replacement necessary, and it was a cost that was quite exorbitant because it averaged out to be about $2,200 to $2,300 a window, and by comparison, a lot of board member has indicated and expressed puzzlement and bewilderness why it would cost that much, because it only cost them about $4,000 or $5,000 to replace the 20 plus windows in the Vancouver Special with vinyl windows. So, but the architecture is of the period, and we are most pleased to be able to bring it back to its original, because other pictures will show that in 1945, when the Lim Sai Hor bought it, and thereafter depleted the arches and renovated to its architectural era at that time of straight lines, were dilapidated by the 70s, and it was I guess it's noted it was until 2017 when we restored it back to its original facade. Chinatown buildings, if you walk around, you will see that the facade has windows or divisional lines that shows a double height, basically about 16 feet for the main floor. Now, the story is that in the old days, as regular current regulations and bylaws, there were occupant limits, and so for the Chinese to make most and take most advantageous of those situations, they built a mezzanine on the main floor, most of them extending from after the foyer and to the back, and they're like the Caucasians in those days branded them cheetah floors, because they were basically about 6 feet in height, and of course most probably in those days 90% of the Chinese were under 6 feet, so it was okay for them. And as in our building, we have the main floor with the cheetah floor, but other building, prominent building like the Chinese time, I've seen it when they even had printing machines up on the second floor. And there were rumors that in other buildings, they even went as far as utilizing the space on the Cheetah floor for opium den. So that's the reality and the facts of how those buildings were constructed, and they basically all, if not removed, have a mezzanine / cheetah floor on the main floor. In my research and in my participation on the conservation project of this building, it was noted that the original Chinese Empire Reform Association headquarters only extended about 2/3 of the lot, and back in the 30s, I believe, maybe not that late, but they extended and built an addition towards the back, fronting Shanghai Alley. And in my own, I guess, childish thinking, is that that's probably how they got themselves extended past west of Carroll Street, because if they were criticized for going west, they would just probably shrug their shoulder and say, well, this is just an alley, Shanghai Alley, and that's why on records in the 30s, Shanghai Alley was just as vibrant as Carroll Street or Penn Street, with retailers and with commercial activities back there. Shijiao Alley is the green space just south of the building. I was not involved, or I wasn't privy to the historic significance, but I do know that in the 80s there was an effort to recreate a Silk Road program, and Shijiao Alley is part of this Silk Road program project that was implemented to connect to the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Garden. So if you stand there, you can see that it's angled towards the garden, but on the other hand, when you go west, it stops right at Shanghai Alley. So I don't, and that's why I said I'm not 100%, or rather, I'm not aware of how that went. But it was originally as a part of the Silk Road project that the 1980s had, and I don't know if it may have, but physically I can't see the connection. Is the CPR railway that the International Village, previously Tinseltown. As you walk in, you can see that it's all the way up on the top, and if you look west, or rather south, southeast towards the water, to the CPR yard, is clear. And that's one of the requirements of the Tinseltown development, that they have to maintain that railway view corridor, or railway site along to the water. So that's why I can't see how it could have any connection to there, because Shijiao Alley ends at Shanghai Alley, and with the success senior housing, it completely blocks it off. So maybe it was originally, because the senior housing was not built until thereafter, and maybe by that time the planning requirements were changed.